Imagine a world where most people do not truly think for themselves, but merely echo what they hear. They cling to the comfort of the majority's opinion, and they fear standing apart from the crowd. Now ask yourself how much of our modern life, our daily choices, and even our deepest beliefs are genuinely ours, and how much comes from what Arthur Schopenhauer called the herd mind. Today, we are going to explore this unsettling yet fascinating idea, why it destroys reason, and how we can liberate ourselves from its grip. Stay with me until the very end, because the final revelation I will share is the most powerful of all, and it has the potential to change the way you perceive society, yourself, and the meaning of freedom. Before we begin this journey, let me ask you something. Do you ever feel that the people around you act more like reflections than thinkers, that instead of questioning, they imitate, and instead of reasoning, they conform? This is not merely a modern issue tied to social media or politics. It is a timeless feature of human psychology, one that philosophers and psychologists have warned about for centuries. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your reflections in the comments. This discussion will challenge your understanding in ways that might feel uncomfortable but necessary, and if you stay until the end, you will see how Schopenhauer's insights, when combined with modern psychology, can give you the tools to resist the illusions of the herd and awaken a deeper, more independent way of thinking. Arthur Schopenhauer lived in the 19th century, yet his words echo today more powerfully than ever before. He believed that the majority of people do not engage in genuine reasoning. Instead, they are carried along by instinctive drives, by desires, and by the fear of exclusion. To him, the herd mind was not merely a weakness, but a destructive force crushing individuality, silencing truth, and eroding the foundation of human freedom. Think about how easily a crowd can be manipulated by slogans, by fear, or by promises. A group of individuals, each capable of reflection when merged together, often loses that very ability to reason. Psychologist Gustave Le Bon, in his classic study The Crowd, expanded on this, showing that crowds think in images, emotions, and impulses rather than logic. And long before Le Bon, Schopenhauer already sensed that the pressure to belong makes people surrender their reason in exchange for the comfort of acceptance. Here is a question for you to reflect on. Have you ever agreed with something you internally doubted simply because everyone else seemed convinced? If yes, then you have already tasted the power of the herd mind, and if no, are you completely sure that some of your deepest convictions are truly yours, or could they be unconscious imitations of the collective? Schopenhauer insisted that truth is not determined by how many people believe in it. In fact, he often hinted that the more widely something is accepted, the more likely it is an illusion. This claim is as provocative as it is disturbing, because it forces us to doubt the very foundations of our society, from religion to politics, from morality to culture. He warned that the collective often mistakes convenience for truth and habit for reason. But why does this happen? The answer lies both in philosophy and psychology. Human beings are social creatures, and belonging to a group provides safety. Our ancestors knew that isolation meant danger, while conformity meant protection. That ancient instinct still operates within us, but today it manifests not as physical survival, but as psychological comfort. To disagree with the herd is to risk rejection, ridicule, and loneliness. And yet, as Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher deeply influenced by Schopenhauer, once said, the individual has always had to fight to avoid being overwhelmed by the tribe. This is what makes the herd mind so powerful. It appeals to our fears and desires, whispering that it is better to be accepted than to be right, better to be applauded than to be truthful, and in that whisper, reason is slowly drowned. Imagine a student in a classroom. The teacher asks a difficult question. The majority of students confidently give the wrong answer. The few who know the truth hesitate. They look around, they feel the tension, and many will stay silent or even conform to the wrong response. This simple scenario has been repeated countless times in psychological studies, such as Solomon Asch's conformity experiments in the 20th century. These experiments reveal how fragile independent thought becomes when confronted by the collective. Schopenhauer never knew these studies, but his intuition had already uncovered the same truth. The herd mind corrupts reason at its very core. Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself how many of your beliefs are based on evidence and how many are inherited from the social circles you belong to. Is your political position truly the result of reflection, or is it borrowed from the group you identify with? Do you believe what you believe because it is right or because it feels safe? These are not easy questions. They demand courage because to confront the herd mind is to confront our deepest fears. The fear of being excluded and the fear of standing alone. Schopenhauer argued that the journey toward wisdom and true freedom begins precisely here, at the point where we stop repeating and begin questioning. In this exploration, we will see not only how the herd mind undermines reason, but also how we can resist it. In the next part, we will uncover how Schopenhauer connects this concept to the illusions of happiness and our constant hunger for approval, and why breaking free from the herd requires both intellectual honesty and inner strength. But before we reach that point, I leave you with this challenge. Think of one belief you hold with conviction. Now imagine that everyone around you suddenly abandoned it. Would you still hold it? Would you defend it, even in solitude, or would you quietly let it go? This question reveals much more about the depth of your independence than you might think. To understand why Schopenhauer viewed the herd mind as such a destructive force, we must look deeper into his philosophy of existence. For him, life is not driven by pure reason, but by what he called the will. This will is a blind, irrational energy that compels us to act, to desire, to survive, and to compete. It runs deeper than logic and deeper than thought. It is the essence of our being. But when this will operates through the collective, through the masses, it becomes far more dangerous. Why? Because instead of individuals confronting their desires and illusions honestly, they merge into a collective chorus where nobody questions and everyone follows. This is how the herd mind destroys reason. Not through argument, not through persuasion, but by drowning the individual voice in the noise of the majority. Think of it as a kind of subtle hypnosis. When you are surrounded by people who all think the same way, your mind unconsciously begins to align with theirs, and once you are absorbed into that flow, you may not even realize that your own independent reasoning has faded away. Psychologists in the 20th century provided even more evidence for this tendency. The well-known Milgram experiments demonstrated how ordinary people, when guided by authority figures and supported by the silent approval of others, were willing to perform acts they would have considered unimaginable alone, while Milgram's main focus was obedience. The underlying mechanism is the same. People surrender their judgment to what appears to be the collective consensus. Schopenhauer would have seen this as confirmation of how easily reason collapses under the pressure of conformity. But let us pause and look at society itself from childhood. We are trained to conform in school. The child who questions too much is labeled difficult in workplaces. The employee who challenges group consensus risks being marked as disruptive. Even in friendships and families, silence often feels safer than honesty. So ask yourself, how many times in your life have you stayed silent simply to avoid discomfort, and what did that silence cost you? Schopenhauer was uncompromising in his critique. He said that most people would rather die than think, and indeed many do. He accused the masses of living within illusions, illusions of progress, illusions of morality, illusions of truth, because they are unwilling to face the deeper reality that independent reasoning often isolates them from the comfort of belonging. And yet here lies the paradox. The very thing that isolates you, the courage to stand apart, is also what sets you free. This is why later thinkers such as Søren Kierkegaard and Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized the individual as the highest form of existence. To be an authentic individual is to resist the suffocating embrace of the herd, to risk loneliness in the pursuit of truth. Authenticity demands solitude and courage because truth rarely lives in the crowd. Now consider how much of what society praises today is in reality herd behavior disguised as wisdom. Trends, movements, ideologies, and mass opinions all seem powerful and righteous, but are they truly rational, or are they merely new expressions of the same blind will that Schopenhauer warned about? We must learn to recognize how easily the collective mind can disguise conformity as virtue and submission as enlightenment. To think independently is not easy. It demands patience and humility. It means being willing to stand apart from those who think they already know the truth. It requires a kind of inner strength that resists the soothing illusion of agreement. Schopenhauer believed that the philosopher's task was precisely this: to remain awake amid the slumber of the masses, to use reason not as a tool for comfort, but as a weapon for liberation. And perhaps that is where our challenge lies today, in an age where opinions travel faster than thought and where belonging often replaces understanding. The task of independent thinking is both harder and more urgent than ever before. To free ourselves from the herd is not to reject society, but to reclaim our capacity to think as individuals. Only then can reason survive in a world increasingly ruled by the echo of the crowd. Masquerading as enlightenment, let us look deeper. Schopenhauer believed that the herd not only destroys reason, but also distorts our understanding of happiness. Most people, he claimed, chase after the same goals: wealth, recognition, and prestige. But why is that? Is it because these things truly lead to fulfillment, or because the herd insists that they should look around you? How often do people measure their worth not by inner reflection, but by how others perceive them? This is the psychological trap when we allow the herd mind to direct our lives. We are not really living authentically. We are living borrowed lives, following scripts handed to us by society, culture, or fashion. And the tragedy, according to Schopenhauer, is that such existence prevents us from discovering genuine truth or real happiness. But here lies the twist. Schopenhauer never believed that we could entirely escape the will or the herd. He was not naive. He understood that social pressures are powerful and sometimes inescapable. Yet he argued that true wisdom begins when we become aware of this mechanism, when we recognize the illusions created by the herd and take a conscious step back. Even partial freedom from the collective is already a profound triumph of reason. Imagine walking in a crowded city where everyone moves in one direction. It feels natural to follow, but if you suddenly stop and observe, you realize the current may not lead where you wish to go. That moment of awareness, that pause, is the beginning of freedom. This is exactly what Schopenhauer wanted us to practice: the discipline of stepping back, questioning, and daring to think, even when the crowd rushes elsewhere. So let me ask you directly, when was the last time you truly questioned one of your deepest convictions? Not small matters of taste, but fundamental beliefs. Do you hold them because you have examined them with reason, or because the herd told you they are sacred? This is a challenge. I invite you to explore in the comments, because sharing your honest reflection might not only free you, but also inspire others who struggle in silence. As we move forward, we will uncover how Schopenhauer connected the herd mind to illusions of morality and the problem of imitation in human culture. More importantly, we will see how resisting the herd is not simply about thinking differently, but about cultivating strength, solitude, and inner clarity. In the next part, I will show you how Schopenhauer's insights can be fused with modern psychology to expose the invisible chains that bind us to the crowd, and more importantly, how to break those chains without losing our humanity. But before we continue, consider this reflection. If every voice around you suddenly declared your convictions wrong, would you have the courage to stand alone with reason, or would you seek the comfort of the herd? Schopenhauer's reflections on the herd mind were not merely a critique of mass opinion. They were also an attack on the illusions of morality that dominate human societies. He argued that what most people call morality is nothing more than conformity to convention. We tend to believe that if something is accepted by the majority, then it must be good. But for Schopenhauer, this was the most dangerous delusion of all true morality. he insisted, cannot be dictated by the herd. It must arise from a deeper source, an honest awareness of human suffering and a genuine compassion that does not depend on social approval. Think for a moment about how moral codes have changed throughout history. Practices once seen as natural and unquestionable, such as slavery, strict class hierarchies, or cruel punishments, were defended by entire civilizations. The herd proclaimed them moral, yet time exposed them as unjust and destructive. This demonstrates Schopenhauer's insight. The crowd does not seek truth, it seeks comfort. What is comfortable for the majority at any given time is disguised as morality, while those who challenge it are exiled or condemned. Now ask yourself, are there practices in our own age that we accept blindly, simply because the majority endorses them? Could it be that a century from now, people will look back at us with the same disbelief with which we now view the moral blindness of past eras? Schopenhauer's challenge was that morality based on conformity is no morality at all. It is mere obedience, and obedience when it silences reason is perilous. This is why he placed such immense value on independent thought and individual courage. Without them, morality becomes nothing more than a reflection of collective desires. Psychology has repeatedly confirmed this in experiments on social conformity. People have been shown to adjust not only their opinions, but even their perception of reality to fit the group. The Ash experiments, which we mentioned earlier, revealed that individuals will claim to see something that is not there merely because everyone else in the room insists upon it. In other words, the herd can override not only logic, but perception itself. This is where imitation enters the picture. Human beings are naturally imitative creatures. We learn speech behavior and values by copying others. René Girard, a modern thinker, expanded this idea with his theory of mimetic desire, the concept that we desire things not because of their inherent worth, but because others desire them. Here we see Schopenhauer's warning come alive. The herd not only shapes our beliefs, but molds our very desires. We crave what others crave. We chase what others chase and convince ourselves it was our own choice. Imagine scrolling through social media. How many trends, opinions, and moral positions are adopted not through reflection, but through repetition? People post, share, and echo ideas, often without truly examining them. The result is a digital amplification of the herd mind. Schopenhauer could not have foreseen Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, but he understood the mechanism perfectly. The individual dissolves into imitation, and reason is replaced by the hunger to belong. This raises a profound question. What in your life is genuinely your own, and what is an imitation? Your convictions, your ambitions, even your sense of purpose. Do they come from your inner reasoning or from the borrowed desires of the crowd? Reflecting honestly on this can be uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Schopenhauer believed that the first step toward liberation from the herd mind begins in solitude. He himself lived much of his life in isolation, writing with tireless dedication while being largely ignored by his peers. He knew the price of standing apart, but he also knew its immense value. Solitude allows us to hear the voice of reason that the collective noise suppresses it. Gives us the stillness to think, to question, and to rediscover truths that the herd may mock or dismiss. Yet solitude alone is not sufficient. Courage is equally essential. The courage to endure misunderstanding, rejection, and even ridicule. Nietzsche, building on Schopenhauer, described this as the path of the higher individual, the one who dares to create values for themselves rather than inherit them from the herd. Such a path is difficult, but it is the only road to authentic freedom. So let me ask you again, how comfortable are you with solitude? Do you embrace it as an opportunity for deep reflection, or do you avoid it because silence feels unbearable? Your answer may reveal how strong the herd's influence truly is in your life. But here lies another paradox. While solitude liberates us, we cannot entirely abandon society. We live among others, we rely on others, and we are inevitably shaped by culture. Schopenhauer knew this and never suggested that we escape humanity altogether. Rather, he urged us to become aware of the illusions of the herd so that when we interact with society, we do so consciously with reason intact, to live in society but not be devoured by it. That is the true challenge. As we move into the final stage of this journey, we must confront the most powerful realization of all resisting. The herd mind is not simply an intellectual act but a moral and existential duty. It is about reclaiming our humanity, our freedom, and our dignity in a world that constantly seeks to reduce us to echoes of the collective. Schopenhauer's ultimate warning was clear: if the herd destroys reason, then the individual loses not only truth, but the very possibility of authentic existence. Before we uncover that final and transformative insight, I want to leave you with one more question. If truth and morality are not guaranteed by the majority, then where should we look for them? And are you prepared to accept the answer, even if it separates you from everyone around you? Throughout our journey, we have seen how Schopenhauer exposed the herd mind as a destructive force that silences reason, distorts morality, and traps us in imitation. We have asked difficult questions about our beliefs, desires, and our readiness to stand apart. But now we arrive at the deepest realization of all, the one that unites everything and shows why resisting the herd is not only a philosophical decision but a profound moral necessity. Schopenhauer believed that at the core of life lies suffering, the blind will that drives us, the herd that shapes us, and the illusions that soothe us all are tied together in the reality that existence is full of struggle, uncertainty, and pain. Most people, he argued, refuse to face this truth directly. Instead, they hide within distractions, within the safety of the herd, where shared illusions protect them from the discomfort of seeing things as they truly are. But here lies the danger. By running into the herd, we do not escape suffering, we only trade the possibility of real understanding for the comfort of falsehood. This is why the herd mind destroys reason, not merely because it silences independent thought, but because it blocks the very path to wisdom. To reason authentically is to face reality as it is, not as the collective wishes it to be. And if existence is full of suffering, then only by confronting that suffering honestly can we find a deeper kind of freedom. Consider this. Every society builds stories to hide its wounds. Nations glorify their pasts. Religions promise salvation, and cultures create rituals of distraction. These myths may bring comfort, but they are also illusions. Carefully maintained by the majority, the herd clings to them because they are easier to accept than truth. Schopenhauer challenges us to ask what happens when we strip away these comforting lies, what remains when we face life exactly as it is. The answer, according to him, is both unsettling and liberating. When we see through the illusions of the herd, we begin to recognize the universality of suffering. And in that recognition, a new morality begins to form. Not a morality based on obedience, but one rooted in compassion. Schopenhauer believed that compassion is the only true moral foundation because it arises not from social rules or religious laws, but from the direct understanding that others suffer just as we do. This compassion cannot be taught by the herd. It must come from solitude and reflection, where reason is free to see without distortion. This is the final revelation. Resisting the herd is not merely about thinking differently, it is about becoming capable of genuine empathy. The herd mind destroys reason, but it also erases compassion because it reduces people to categories, identities, and roles. Only the individual who steps away from the crowd can truly see another human being, as they are not as a symbol or stereotype, but as a fellow soul sharing the same burden of existence. Think for a moment about how easily public opinion dehumanizes others. Societies divide humanity into insiders and outsiders. Political groups demonize opponents, and entire cultures justify cruelty in the name of tradition or unity. The herd always finds ways to disguise its hostility as virtue. Yet the individual who has freed themselves from the herd can see beyond these illusions. They recognize that the suffering of others mirrors their own, and from that recognition grows a morality that cannot be shaken by popular opinion or social approval. This is why Schopenhauer's philosophy remains so powerful and unsettling. He does not ask us to resist the herd merely out of intellectual arrogance. He asks us to resist it so that we may live truthfully, think independently, and act with compassion for him. The free individual is not one who follows no rules, but one who lives according to reason and genuine kindness, even when the herd mocks or rejects them. The courage to think freely must be joined with the courage to care deeply, because both are rare and both are essential for real humanity. Pause for a moment and imagine a world where more people dared to resist the illusions of the herd. Imagine a society where individuals thought critically, questioned sincerely, and acted with empathy. How different would our politics become, our cultures, our relationships? Instead of echoing slogans, we might speak with understanding instead of condemning. We might listen instead of competing. We might cooperate. Such a vision may seem distant, even utopian, but it begins with something small and personal, the decision within each of us to step back from the collective noise and reclaim the quiet voice of reason and compassion within ourselves. So let me ask you one last and intimate question. Are you willing to live with the discomfort of independence if it means discovering truth? Or will you remain in the safety of the herd, surrounded by illusions but protected from the demands of authentic existence? Only you can decide this, and your decision will shape not only your own life, but also the kind of world we continue to build together. The truth may be heavy, but it is also liberating, and once seen, it cannot easily be forgotten. As we draw to a close, remember Schopenhauer's warning: the herd mind does not simply destroy reason, it corrupts the soul by trading understanding for comfort and individuality for imitation. But also remember his promise hidden in his bleak vision, that the person who dares to resist, who faces suffering with honesty, and meets others with compassion can rise above the illusions of the collective and touch something deeper, something enduringly real. If you allow these ideas to settle within you, they may change not only how you see society, but how you perceive yourself and others. Schopenhauer reminds us that freedom is not found in belonging to the majority, but in belonging to truth, and that compassion born from awareness is the only force strong enough to counter the blindness of the herd. Imagine for a moment what it would mean to live in such awareness, to wake each day not guided by the noise of the collective but by your own reasoned conscience. It might mean loneliness at times and discomfort often, but it would also mean authenticity and depth, a life grounded in understanding rather than imitation. This is the challenge Schopenhauer leaves us with. Will we continue to let the herd dictate our thoughts, our morals, and our desires? Or will we take the risk of standing alone, guided by reason and compassion? The answer to that question defines not only our individuality, but the future of human freedom itself, because in a world of echoes, the true act of courage is to be a voice.